It began with a single headline that rippled through the digital world like an earthquake. US seizes $14 billion in Bitcoin linked to Cambodian crime empire. At first, few believed it. $14 billion. Gone. Hidden in blockchain wallets. Quietly circulating through crypto exchanges, luxury real estate, and shell corporations. Too many. It sounded like a Hollywood script. But this was no movie. It was real, sprawling, and darker than anyone imagined. The revelation came from the U.S. Department of Justice's Cybercrimes Task Force in early October 2025. The report detailed an international operation stretching from Phnom Penh's neon-lit casinos to the dusty borders of Siem, where thousands of workers had been forced to operate online scams, all under the control of a powerful man named Chen Zhi, the chairman of Prince Holding Group. At the surface, Prince Group appeared to be a legitimate empire luxury condo spanking ventures, charities, and media sponsorships. Chen Zhi was hailed in glossy magazines as a modern business visionary, Cambodia's golden billionaire who brought prosperity to the nation. His face appeared on billboards beside slogans about progress, faith, and innovation. But beneath that polished exterior was a web of deceit, exploitation, and cybercrime so intricate that even investigators struggled to untangle it. "We're not talking about a few hackers or online traders here," said FBI Special Agent Marissa Lane, one of the lead investigators. "We're talking about a criminal infrastructure, a kingdom built on lies, manipulation, and human suffering." The case began unraveling months before the public ever heard about it. Reports had surfaced from NGOs and trafficking survivors about forced labor compounds scattered throughout Cambodia's special economic zones. These compounds were allegedly run by local syndicates with government connections. Compounds where workers couldn't leave, phones were confiscated, and their only task was to scam strangers online. Many of DC employees were trafficked to migrants from China, Vietnam, and Malaysia, lured with promises of good-paying tech jobs. Once they arrived, passports were taken, and escapement torture. Or worse, one rescued worker later told The Guardian, "We were told we were doing customer service work, but soon they gave us fake profiles, scripts, and photos. We had to find people online, talk sweetly to them, make them trust us, and convince them to invest in crypto platforms that didn't exist." Those fake platforms, meticulously coded and visually identical to real trading apps, became the primary tools of the scam. Victims, mostly from the US, UK, and Australia, were slowly fattened up over weeks or months through long, intimate, online conversations. The scammers referred to this process as pig butchering. Each pig, a victim, would be carefully groomed until their trust was absolute. Then, with one click, the money vanished into crypto wallets, controlled by the syndicate. By the time the FBI, DOJ, and Interpol began tracking the wallets, the trail had split into hundreds of shell accounts, an intentionally chaotic network designed to confuse investigators. Yet, behind the chaos, the money always led back to the same place, Prince Group. What shocked authorities most wasn't just the amount minus 127,000 Bitcoin, the largest crypto seizer in history, but the sheer sophistication. It wasn't a lone hacker in a dark room. It was an organization, complete with HR departments, internal rankings, performance bonuses, and even disciplinary systems for scammers who didn't meet targets. Everything about it was structured like a Fortune 500 company, said a DOJ cybercrime analyst, except the product they sold was deception. As the investigation deepened, whispers began to surface about Chen Zhi's lavish lifestyle, his $80 million private jet, the yacht moored in Singapore, the parties attended by foreign officials and celebrities. All of it, prosecutors now claim, financed by stolen dreams and broken trust. What began as a digital scam had evolved into a global crime syndicate, operating under the cover of legitimate business. And yet, this was only the beginning. Behind every Bitcoin transaction was a victim, a retired teacher, a young investor, a widow, a student. Behind every text of love was a captive worker, typing through tears, thousands of miles from home. The empire was about to crumble, but the story of how it grew, and how the world finally brought it down, was even more disturbing than anyone could imagine. To understand how one man could build an empire of deceit worth over $14 billion, you have to understand Chen Zhi, or, as he sometimes called himself in Western circles, Vincent Chun. On paper, Chen Zhi was the embodiment of Southeast Asia's new wealth. Young, educated, and ambitious. His official biographies described him as a philanthropist, investor, and visionary leader dedicated to Cambodia's economic growth. He dressed impeccably, spoke fluent English and Mandarin, and surrounded himself with luxury, private jets, supercars, imported art collections, and security convoys that moved through Phnom Penh like a presidential motorcade. To the outside world, he was untouchable. To those inside his circle, he was meticulous, ruthless, and dangerously intelligent. Founded in the mid-2010s, Prince Holding Group quickly became one of Cambodia's most powerful conglomerates. Its portfolio stretched across real estate, finance, entertainment, telecommunications, and even healthcare. Chen Zhi's name was everywhere, from billboards to charity. He positioned himself as a symbol of modernization, a bridge between East and West, and his company often appeared in partnership with regional banks, government ministries, and even Western investors. But while the public saw a billionaire helping Cambodia redefine its skyline, investigators now believe that the group's rise was fueled by illicit money flows from online scams, laundering networks, and offshore crypto wallet. According to a U.S. Treasury report, at least 42 shell companies linked to Prince subsidiaries were used to route money through Hong Kong, Singapore, and Dubai. Funds entered through fake investment schemes were converted into crypto, then withdrawn as real estate investments or consulting fees. This web of transactions blurred the line between Chen Zhi as legitimate and criminal operations so thoroughly that, for years, he appeared clean, even as billions of stolen dollars passed through his empire. Employees who worked under Chen Zhi describe a man obsessed with control and image. Every public photo, every speech, every handshake was staged. He studied Western PR techniques and modeled his persona on CEOs like Elon Musk and Jack Ma, men who turned ambition into myth. He wanted to be Cambodia's first global tycoon, said a former Prince executive, speaking under anonymity. He wanted people to think of him as a visionary, not a criminal. That's why everything he did had a layer of glamour, but behind the doors, it was fear. You didn't question him. You didn't ask where the money came from. Insiders allege Chen Zhi's empire ran on fear, loyalty, and silence. Those who crossed him were quietly dismissed or disappeared from the company altogether. Some were said to have fled the country after receiving threats. What made him so dangerous wasn't just his money. It was his network. He had powerful friends, politicians, business magnates, even international consultants who vouched for his projects. His name appeared on donations to government foundations. He hosted charity events, attended by diplomats. All of this gave him legitimacy, a perfect disguise for a criminal kingpin. And while Chen Zhi appeared on magazine covers and business panels, another part of his empire was growing in the shadows. In 2022, as the world reopened after COVID-19, Cambodia saw an explosion of tech parks and digital investment centers. On paper, they were call centers and crypto startups. In reality, many were scam compounds, prison-like facilities where trafficked workers were forced to deceive online victims. Leaked documents later showed that at least 5 of these centers were indirectly financed by companies tied to Prince Group. The connection was always the same pattern. A front company in Phnom Penh would invest in customer service centers. The centers would hire foreign workers under fake job postings. Once inside, workers' passports were seized, and they were forced to run pig butchering scams, often working 14 to 16 hours a day. It was all hidden behind corporate jargon, said a financial crimes investigator. No one calls it a scam compound on paper. They call it overseas client engagement infrastructure. Victims trapped inside described a daily routine that felt like a digital prison. They used English scripts written by professional copywriters. They maintained multiple fake personas across dating apps and crypto groups. The goal was simple: make people fall in love, then make them invest. Each successful score was tracked. Each failure brought punishment. Some workers said they were beaten or starved if they didn't meet quotes. 4 years, the illusion held. Chen Zhi continued to sponsor charity galas, university programs, and even sports events. He launched luxury developments like Prince Happiness Plaza and Prince Times Tower, claiming they would redefine urban living. The irony was bitter. Those towers, shining symbols of progress, were allegedly built with money siphoned from victims thousands of miles away. By 2024, whispers began to spread among Cambodia's elites. Foreign diplomats and financial auditors started asking questions. How could one company expand so fast, so lavishly, with no transparent funding? Still, Chen Zhi seemed invincible. He donated millions to flood victims, appeared beside government ministers, and even received awards for business excellence. Behind the applause, though, the US Justice Department had already begun its silent pursuit tracing crypto wallets, subpoenaing blockchain data, mapping digital fingerprints that all pointed to one man in a single encrypted drive seized from a Prince executive. Investigators found records of over 700,000 crypto transactions, many linked to fake trading apps and romance scams. The evidence was undeniable. The philanthropist tycoon was about to be unmasked as the mastermind of one of the largest financial frauds in human history. From the outside, the compounds looked unremarkable. Squat concrete buildings surrounded by high fences and security gates. Just another development on Cambodia's southern coast. But step inside, and you'd find one of the most disturbing realities of the digital age. A cybercrime factory powered by human captivity. The US indictment against Prince Holding Group described these places as command centers for large-scale online deception. Each compound was allegedly organized like a corporate call center, rows of desks, glowing computer screens, and the constant sound of keyboards tapping a symphony of lies echoing through the night. But these were not ordinary employees. Many were slaves of the internet. It often started with a job posting, looking for bilingual customer service representatives. Salary, $3,000 per month. Free accommodation. Crypto marketing role. No experience needed. Thousands of young workers from China, Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand applied for these positions. The pandemic had left them desperate for work. Recruiters spoke politely on the phone, sent contracts, even covered flights. Everything looked legitimate until they landed. Upon arrival, their passports were confiscated for security. Guards escorted them to dormitories inside gated compounds. Within hours, the illusion vanished. They told us we were now part of a crypto project, recalled Lin, a Vietnamese survivor. But when we asked for details, they gave us fake names, fake company badges, and a list of people to message online. That's when I realized we'd been trapped. The crypto project was a global pig butchering operation, a systematic scam built on manipulation, romance, and deceit. The victims weren't just the people sending money. The workers themselves were victims too, trapped into playing villains in a crime they couldn't escape. Every morning began the same way. At las 8 de la mañana. Team leaders, many fluent in English and Mandarin, would assign new clients. Each worker managed up to 20 online identities across dating apps, Facebook, Telegram, and WhatsApp. They had scripts for every situation. For lonely widowers, soft, patient conversation. For young investors, confident insider tips. For crypto enthusiasts, technical jargon and charts that made them sound legitimate. The scam's success relied on psychological precision. Workers were trained to build trust slowly, over weeks. They sent photos stolen from the internet, talked about hobbies, even remembered birthdays. Victims believed they had found a friend, sometimes even love. Once emotional trust was built, the worker would casually mention an investment opportunity. They'd introduce a platform that looked authentic, complete with real-time crypto prices, graphs, and customer support chat. Victims would invest small amounts, see fake profits, and then pour in everything they had. They called it fattening the pig, said Chun, a former captive from Fujian. When the person trusted you completely, that's when you slaughtered them. That's when you took everything. Some victims lost their life savings, hundreds of thousands of dollars wired into the syndicate's crypto wallets. When they tried to withdraw, the platforms would freeze, the scammers would disappear, and the workers they'd be told to find another pig. The physical environment was brutal. Workers slept in crowded dormitories, often 8 to a room. Meals were rationed. Escape was nearly impossible. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Many compounds were surrounded by electric fences. Those who disobeyed orders were beaten or sold to another operation for cash. One survivor told AP News, "You could hear people screaming in the next room. If someone refused to work, they were shocked with electric batons or locked in small cells." Inside the compounds, Chen Zhi's influence was everywhere, not directly, but through the logos and motivational posters plastered on the walls. Prince Group, innovation, integrity, excellence. It was a cruel irony. The word integrity hung above rooms where people were forced to destroy the lives of strangers. Investigators later found that some compounds even had performance boards, ranking workers by how much money they extracted from victims. The top performers received bonuses, luxury food, more freedom of movement, or the promise of eventual release. The lowest performers, they faced punishment or were sold to other crime groups for profit. For every captive worker inside the compound, there were dozens of unseen victims outside, people around the world whose trust and savings were stolen. A 58-year-old teacher in California lost $320,000 after months of messaging a crypto advisor who claimed to love her. A student in London invested his tuition money in a trading platform recommended by his online girlfriend and lost everything. An engineer in Sydney liquidated his retirement fund after a fake investment partner promised a 20% return. Each story followed the same arc: hope, trust, then devastation. The money moved fast from crypto wallets to offshore accounts, then into Chen Zhi's vast empire of real estate, private jets, and political donations. In one of the seized ledgers, investigators found a line item labeled Special Fund, Happiness Project, $2.4 million. That happiness project turned out to be a PR, campaign, charity donations and influencer events. Meant to paint Chen Zhi as a humanitarian, the stolen money had funded his public image. By 2025, the number of trafficked scam workers in Cambodia had grown so large that humanitarian groups called it a digital slavery epidemic. The United Nations estimated that over 200,000 people were trapped in such compounds across Southeast Asia. When raids finally began, led by joint US, Cambodian, and Interpol task forces, what they found stunned even veteran investigators. Rooms full of confiscated phones, SIM cards, and laptops. Walls covered in motivational slogans. Crypto wallets linked to thousands of victims. But what haunted agents most were the survivors. Malnourished, traumatized, and afraid to speak. They apologized to us, one FBI agent recalled. They kept saying, "I'm sorry for scamming people." But they were the ones who needed saving. The Prince Empire had been built on deception at every level: the workers, the victims, the investors, and even the world that believed Chen Zhi was a respectable billionaire. Now, with the walls of the scam compounds collapsing and the truth exposed, the empire stood on the brink of destruction. But justice would not come easily. Because Chen Zhi wasn't just a man, he was a system, one that reached deep into politics, finance, and international law. And in the final chapter, as investigators closed in, they would uncover how this empire fought to survive and the staggering secrets it left behind. For years, Chen Zhi's empire seemed invincible, a shimmering facade of luxury towers, gala dinners, and philanthropic promises. But in the early hours of a humid morning in Phnom Penh, the illusion shattered. It began quietly. A joint task force composed of US federal agents, Cambodian anti-trafficking police, and cybercrime specialists descended on a gated compound in Taikadedit Operation Glass Tower. At first, guards resisted. Shots were reportedly fired, but within hours, hundreds of captives were freed. Laptops, ledgers, and encrypted devices were seized. What investigators found inside would confirm everything they'd feared, and worse. Inside the main control room, a server bank hummed under fluorescent lights. Screens showed live messages being sent to victims across the globe. In a single day, the compound had processed $42 million in crypto transactions. Each transaction represented another stolen dream, another victim's trust turned to dust. When agents cracked the encrypted hard drives, they uncovered a sprawling digital map of the operation usernames, bank routes, and offshore shell companies connecting back to Prince Holding Group and Chen Zhi's inner circle. It was all there, one agent said. The fake trading apps, the wallets, the crypto laundering trail. We could see where every stolen dollar went into jets, real estate, yachts, and political donations. Within weeks, simultaneous raids hit 10 more properties across Cambodia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Over 8,000 Bitcoin wallets were frozen. The US Treasury imposed sanctions on Prince Group and its subsidiaries, and in a move that made global headlines, Interpol issued a red notice for Chen Zhi. For nearly a month, Chen Zhi Banisa. Rumors spread that he had fled to Macau or boarded his private jet to Dubai. Some believed he was hiding under military protection. Others claimed he'd changed his identity. But on November 18, 2025, Cambodian officials, under intense international pressure, announced that Chen Zhi had been detained in Phnom Penh. The arrest was swift, discreet, and surreal. The once untouchable billionaire who dined with ministers and funded charities was now photographed in handcuffs. His head bowed as he was escorted from his glass-walled penthouse overlooking the Mekong River. His assets were frozen. His companies collapsed overnight. Investors scrambled to distance themselves. Prince Holding Group, SA skyscrapers, once symbols of power, stood like empty monuments to deceit. When Chen Zhi was extradited to the United States, the courtroom atmosphere was electric. Cameras lined the streets outside the federal courthouse. Analysts compared it to the trials of Bernie Madoff and Elizabeth Holmes, but on a far grander, darker scale. The indictment spanned 17 counts: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, human trafficking, and forced labor. Operating an international criminal enterprise, prosecutors called the case a landmark in the fight against digital slavery. During the hearings, the jury was shown videos from the scam compounds, footage of workers in cramped rooms, fake crypto apps on screens, and chat logs between victims and their scammers. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution described Chen Zhi as a man who built a kingdom of suffering behind a mask of respectability. His defense team, funded by what remained of his frozen assets, argued that he was a passive investor, unaware of the criminal activities beneath his corporate umbrella. But forensic accounting told a different story, one of deliberate concealment, shell firms, and crypto wallets registered in his own name. After a grueling 6-week trial, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom fell silent as the judge pronounced the sentence: life imprisonment without parole, plus restitution orders totaling $14.3 billion. The fall of Chen Zhi sent shockwaves through Asia's financial elite. Governments scrambled to investigate other investment empires that might conceal similar operations. Across Cambodia, task forces began dismantling more compounds. Thousands of trafficked workers were rescued. NGOs and human rights groups called it a turning point in modern slavery. But while the system began to crumble, the scars remained. The victims will never get their money back, said one FBI investigator. But maybe, for the first time, they'll get justice. The seized Bitcoin minus 127,271 coins was transferred into federal custody, marking the largest crypto seizure in history. Analysts said its recovery reshaped the conversation about blockchain transparency and international cybercrime. Meanwhile, Cambodia faced global scrutiny. Western nations demanded reforms and sanctions. Some politicians who once praised Chen Zhi now denied ever knowing him. His billboards were quietly removed. His name was erased from charity plaques. But the shadow of his empire lingered, a warning of what happens when greed, technology, and human cruelty converge unchecked. Months after the trial, journalists visiting the former compounds found silence where thousands once worked. Desks sat empty. Screens flickered with forgotten login screens. On one wall, a motivational poster still hung crooked. Prince Group, building happiness through innovation. Below it, someone had scrawled in pen, "We were the ones who built it, and we were never happy." The story of Chen Zhi is more than a crime story. It's a mirror, reflecting the dark side of globalization, the loopholes of digital finance, and the invisible victims behind every online scam. The empire is gone, but its lesson remains. In the borderless world of crypto and commerce, the line between success and exploitation is thinner than ever. And as new schemes emerge, new billionaires rise, and new victims log on, the ghost of a $14 billion empire still lingers in the blockchain, whispering a warning. Everything digital leaves a trace, even evil.